I've loved serving this church for the past 25 years, and I'm completely amazed at all that we've accomplished and all that has taken place and the lives that have been touched and the people who have volunteered and the outreaches that we've done. It really has been amazing. And as I kind of think about all that today, I can't help but think all those years ago how this all began. It really started at a really young age, grade 7, standard 5 back in the day. And I started what I called Big Break Gospel Club. And every Wednesday afternoon at 12:15, whatever it was during our big break, I'd get all my mates up into this kiosk above the cricket field and I'd preach to them and I'd ask them if they want to give their lives to Jesus, to bow their heads, close their eyes and put their hands up. And then when they all got saved again, we'll go play cricket. And that was where, for the first time in my life, I felt like, God was calling me to ministry. When I was in standard 9, as a family, we faced a tragedy. My brother was diagnosed with cancer, probably around about the middle of the year, in June, July, and by October, he passed away. For me, it was just kind of like way above my comprehension. I couldn't really just bring all these pieces together, what was going on in my parents' life, my brother's illness. My parents started having these meetings in our home. And so every Wednesday night or Tuesday night, this young group would come in and they'd sing songs, and this guy Trevor would preach to maybe 25, 30 people in my parents' home. And I used to make a duck, I didn't want the whole Christian thing. I was now matric, gonna take the world apart one day. And really, if I go through my high school life, and as I kind of went through each stage of high school, I kind of drifted further from God. In about 1975, probably about October of that year, I kind of said, okay, Lord, I recommit my life to you. Now we had these young people. Christine was part of that group of people. That's where I met her for the first time. And they were singing with acoustic guitars, and they had little bongo drums, and they kind of was very vibey, and it was very non-churchy, if I could say that. And suddenly this whole kind of pastor church thing really began to say, well, I could do this. This is something I can do. And so I kind of began to wonder, I began to think back what took place in grade 7, standard 5, and, was God calling me to ministry? So one night I was lying in bed and I was kind of thinking this through, and I turned off the light and I prayed a prayer. I said, Lord, if you want me to go into ministry one day, I want you to speak to me tonight. As I said the word, tell me tonight, it was as if my whole room just burst into light. And, for me, I could feel God in my bedroom. And it was so kind of overpowering. I actually began a bit afraid. Jesus is in the room kind of thing. And as the fear of what was going on came into me, this light began to dissipate. But a few days after that, I dreamt 2 scriptures. The one comes from 2 Timothy chapter 4, another one's from Psalm 103. And there's a verse that says, he'll make his ministers a flaming fire. And then I read 2 Timothy chapter 4. And my question was, do you want me to go full-time, Lord? And in 2 Timothy chapter 4, it says, I charged before the living and the dead to preach the word in season and out of season. And I read on, and in that verse, Paul writes to Timothy, and he says, and take Mark, for he'll be good for the work of the ministry. I thought, there's my name. And so we went to Bible college in Dallas for 2 years, where we formalized some kind of diploma in what they call practical theology. And so by the time we had kind of come to the end of our final semester Bible college, we had a very strong sense that God was bringing us back. And on our return to South Africa, there were kind of, all in all, there were kind of 6 opportunities for us to kind of go into ministry. And the one that we felt to do was to go start a church in Empangeni. It's exciting to be back.
It's actually quite profound to think that something you did in your 20s You never realized the value of what you were doing. And looking back now, thinking that young lives are still being enriched, it's actually really, really encouraging.
We spent 10 years in Impangeni. We started a Christian school there, and our 3 daughters were born there. So Impangeni has incredibly fond memories for us. Through a scripture that I was studying in the book of Zechariah, I felt like God said, I need to come to Durban. And I read Zechariah chapter 2, and it speaks about a church, a city that will be inhabited without walls. And I said, that's my dream church. Everybody will have access, everybody will be welcome. And I began to get really excited as I read these verses in Zechariah 2, And in the last part of Zechariah 2, sort of towards the end, it says, leave the land of the north, which, it's Impangeni, it's the land of the north, so leave the land of the north. And in Zechariah chapter 4, famous verse, not by might nor by spirit, which we know, but it was the next verse that just struck me. And it kind of the New American Standard Version says, great mountain, what are you before Zerubbabel? You'll become a plain with the removal of the top stone with a shout, grace, grace to it. And I literally stood up in my study and I said, this is it. This church will be called Grace Church.
But I remember the actual drive down and the excitement and just like amped and never gave a thought to what we left behind. It was like weirdly unaware in a way.
And we had no idea what we were going to, really.
Oh no, we thought we were going into a wonderful season of blessing, success. I mean, we were going to take Durban with God.
And I rolled down the window and I shouted out the window, grace, grace to it. We're going to turn Durban upside down for Jesus. So we took out some adverts in the newspapers, and we secured initially that day the Northlands Primary School. And we advertised the service. We're starting this church called Grace Family Church. It's going to meet here.
I was working the overhead projector with the worship songs and playing the tambourine on my leg.
Christine played the piano and I preached. And we had 30 people come to that first service. 15 of them were my friends and family who come out of Durban. And 15 were strangers who saw the ad and walked into the school, into the church. And we were super amped, We thought it went really well. The next Sunday, family and friends are gone. And it's the 15 people who were with us the first Sunday. And it was 15 people. And then the next Sunday it was 15 people. And then the next Sunday it was 15 people. And really, after 3 weeks, I knew we were in trouble. After moving out of Northlands Primary, we moved into Glen Ashley Senior Primary, which we felt was slightly better for the size of the church and in terms of the whole thing. Glen Ashley wasn't a happy time for us. The hard was when people would drive into the parking lot, see nobody in the hall and just drive out again. And we had this one guy, old Gavin, he would run after the guy, said, don't go. And the one evening service, we had this little mixer we set up, and we got the 3 mics, and we got the overhead projector set up, and now we're ready for church. Nobody pitched. I mean, not one person came to church. And I just looked at this thing, this is the end, This is what do we do? And, I always say for 3 years and 10 months, if you can get pedantic about it, but it just never really got past 40 people, 35, 40 people. If somebody joined, somebody left. It was soul destroying, I thought that I'd come to die. And I thought, God, you've given me this word, How's this? How can this happen? I really struggled with my faith, and it really was kind of a very, very dark place. And thinking, honestly, I've come here to die. I think God's come here to kill me. In all of this, I just can't believe it. I'm dumbfounded. And I have 3 pastor friends of mine, individually of each other, all come and tell me, what God orders, He pays for. So obviously God hasn't ordered this thing, And the one guy was insistent that I give up. So one day I invited this guy who had a reputation of being an evangelist to come and preach in our church, to try and get more people into the church. And that guy happened to be Dudley Thompson.
And it was a terrible sermon, but nevertheless, that's how I met him. That's how I got the vision to join Grace.
But it really formed a transition, because he gave me a book when he finished that preach called The Challenge of Missions by a guy by the name of Oswald J. Smith. And as I read it, it was a book around missionaries and around sending missionaries. So I held what I call the Missions Mini Summit in my home. Well, the next Sunday, we had 50 people in church. The next Sunday, we had 70 people in church. And from there, the obvious step, we kind of outgrew that hall. It's a small hall at Glen Ashley Senior Primary. And we negotiated and got Northlands Girls High School. But now we started to have traction. We're 4 years into this journey. And Northlands Girls I think we were there for like 7 or 8, 9 years. But it was wonderful years. The people at Northlands Girls, the guys who ran the facilities there, it really was a complete antithesis of what we had experienced at Glen Ashley. And I think the highlight for me was watching people, whether it was through Alpha or through where we then began these seeker services. But we saw people coming to faith. We saw old Christians being revived. You know, Northlands has a big swimming pool at the school. And we'd have these baptismal services. And I mean, most of the oaks know that I'm a fan of baptisms, you know. There seemed to be some both spiritual and physical growth in our lives and the lives of the people around about us. So now we're getting traction in Northlands Girls High School. The church is growing. We're doing a couple of services a day. But we know that, you know, Northlands isn't going to serve us forever, and we're going to outgrow it. And also we want to have our own place, you know. So a friend of mine comes to me and he says he'll take it on himself to find a property. And one day he picks me up. He says, "I found the place." And he drives me onto this property where the Mshlanga campus is now.
So at one point I stood on the land that Grace Mshlanga is on, and I just realized that this must be church. It's staring down at the playground of Durban. It's staring up at the captains of industry. It just must be church. And so when I had a chat with Mark and we were having a breakfast together and he said Grace had bought the land, I was just overwhelmed with excitement. It seemed that God was at work once again.
I remember the day clearly in Northlands Girls High School saying to the church, "Hey, listen guys, we found a piece of land. Here it is." And everybody kind of gasped, and I can just see, well, how much is it going to cost and who's going to pay for it? And I said, and you know the good news? A couple of guys have bought this land for the church already. The land is ours.
And we knew that it wouldn't be too long till the building started rising up out of the ground, and we had to plan to move the people across there as well as attract new people to the church. And I put my hand up to get onto a team with a bunch of other people at church, and we started putting together a strategy, a marketing sort of plan around not losing people that we already had, but gaining a whole bunch more people to fill up this incredible new building in Umhlanga Rocks.
We decided we'll do a land dedication. We pitched this fantastic tent on the site, and our idea was that everybody would, in a sense, have a stake in this thing. At a certain point in the service, we said to everybody, write your dream of what you want God to do in your life and the lives of the people that you love, and write it on the stake, and go out leave the tent, walk onto the grounds, and put the stake in the ground, symbolically saying, this is for God. And then we collected those stakes, and they're still in the concourse. You know, they're kind of a testimonial, a reminder of the contribution and the intention and the mission and the vision of what we're going to do. And so when it now was coming to completion and we were going to occupy the building, and it became clear that we would have our first service on Christmas of 2005. And so that first service rolled around, and not everything was complete. We never had our PA system up. We had a hire system and other stuff.
I'll never forget my parents being quite nervous and talking about how we were going to situate the people so that the room felt occupied. And 15 minutes before the service, the auditorium was full. I ran upstairs to my dad. He was getting ready for the sermon and said, "Dad, it's full, 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 full." He looked out the window and there was traffic coming up the off-ramp from the M4. And he said, I thought there was an accident. I said, no, that's Grace. That's people coming to Grace.
And we probably had about 1,800 people. I mean, if the fire marshals were here, it would have been horrific, because people were sitting in the stairs and they were in the concourse. We actually opened the doors and we just had a fantastic start. Suddenly, we've been a church of about 400 people, 2 services, sometimes 3 services back in Northlands. And suddenly, in the first few months, we're having 1,000 regular attendees. And another significant moment arose when Skip joined. He brought Matt on. Tom and Jess came on at the same time.
So it was at GLS 2006. Mark invited me up to his office for lunch, and he asked me if I was going to be a Baptist my entire life.
And it was as if the opportunity for us to be a church that was more than just a Sunday church. We're involved with missions and justice. Our counseling department is training and equipping counselors throughout the country. We have hundreds and hundreds of kids that come here on the weekend. We have small groups. We have midweek training opportunities, courses. We have youth, young adults, partnering with Red Frogs. I think of a guy like Benji, counseling families who are grieving. And in the midst of this, we're saying, God, we're joining your vision to heal the world. And we're hungry for more, not for numbers, but for life change. So, I've had the privilege of going to the Global Leadership Summit for years. And one of the early ones, there was a pre-conference to the main conference. And the pre-conferences was this thing, multi-campus. And the incredible thing about it was that you can be one church that meets in multiple locations. And so the initial attitude around was to create space. And we kind of did some analysis and we realized at the time, probably about 200, 240 people were traveling from Belita to Durban. DJ did a tremendous job in establishing and in preparing the way for us to do this kind of thing. We eventually got a piece of property in Belita and we got a fantastic tent, the most brilliant site.
I think God's just put such an incredibly deep love in our hearts for Grace Family Church and for the staff, the team, the people. The Belita campus has been amazing. That congregation they've just welcomed us in, they've made us feel like family, and we're absolutely loving it. And this has been really special to Mans and I.
The campus down in Riverside is just, Tom has done such an incredible job there.
For me, when I think of the Riverside story, there's so much that's happened. On the 25th of December 2012, we had our first service. We had about 300 people attending. And since then, we've just grown from strength to strength. We've seen God add people to us and gone from 1 to 2 to now 3 services on a Sunday. We've had to build a balcony just to accommodate the growth. We've built a coffee shop, and we've just really had a lot of fun along the way.
We think that Grace Family Church's unique identity and how we do stuff contributes to how others are doing stuff, and that the Church of Jesus Christ can expand through the churches that are out there and through our contribution as well. When I think about the future, I think that as we mature as an organization, as we mature as a church, we'll be passionate about reaching people for Jesus. That we'll be passionate about justice and about mercy and reconciliation. The story of this church is no story when we don't really give thanks and honor and recognize that literally thousands of people have participated to ensure that we are able to join God's mission to heal the world, that we're able to share in this mission and to see the mountain become a plain and be able to declare grace to it.